Hi kids, welcome to this week's video. I'm shooting this on the day I heard, but I'm holding it back obviously until I'm allowed to mention it publicly. I wanted to say a few things about Neville Buchanan, who was a friend of mine, and he was my boss from 1995 to about 2000. This is really difficult. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't my best friend in the whole wide world, but it's still very hard to talk about him so soon. I heard that he passed away last night, and I've been thinking about what I should do, so I thought, well, I should do a video. Not many of you will know him, but what happened was in '95 I was working as a security guard and hated every minute of it. And then I was given a copy of the South Wales newspaper, and this article came up. And I was like, oh, there's a guy doing a sci-fi movie in Cardiff. I like my sci-fi. I wonder if I can get a job. So I wrote him a letter, an actual letter, and posted it to him with a couple of pieces of artwork. What were they? Just I painted with acrylics back in the day. And I said, look, cards on the table, mate. I can draw stuff. I haven't done any filmmaking, but I'm an artist, I'm a painter, I can make models and stuff, I can sculpt a bit, and I'm just willing to make the tea if it gets me out of this job. So he took me on, and within the first day or two, we bonded because we both discovered that we're from the same town in North London, Cricklewood. And in fact, he went to school with my best friend's older brother, and he's been in touch with my best friend from London to this day. And like I say, we all, it was a fun job. I've always said to him, and I've always said to other people, regardless of what you think of Nev as a person, it was the best job I've ever had. And I've told him that. And I said, look, I was getting paid good money, even for '95. I was getting paid decent money to work in a place that was warm and comfortable, and it was basically creative. You know, there were other people sculpting, filming, animating. There's a stop motion production, and I was getting paid for making models and spaceships and storyboarding and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been very grateful about that. But it was a strained relationship because he said to me once, you know, you can't be very good friends with your employees. You have to keep an arm's distance, which I told him was wrong. I said, no, why can't you be friends? But he said, you don't understand, I'm a boss, you know. And we clashed a number of times. The biggest time was when he went to Cannes Film Festival and left me in charge of the workshop. And I made a decision regarding one of the stop motion puppets. And he came back and hit the roof because he wasn't happy with what I did to it, basically. And he took me outside and gave me a right old yelling. And I didn't yell back, but I stood my ground. And I looked him in the eye and I said, look, you put me in charge. I made what I thought was the right decision. If that's not, you know, I'm not psychic. I can't read your mind. If you don't like it, fire me. And he stormed off, and he came back in the afternoon and apologized for shouting at me and said, I respect the way you stood up to me. And I said, I was just telling it like it is. Anyway, in later, I lost contact for a few years, and you know, we got back in touch via social media, Facebook and that kind of stuff. And he hadn't stopped. He hadn't stopped making stuff. From when I knew him, he could just do, you know, he knew about film cameras, you know, Super 8, Super 16. He knew about video. He knew a bit about editing, and he knew how to stop motion animate. Should have mentioned this earlier. He was, as a young kid growing up in London, he got to know the legendary Ray Harryhausen, stop motion animator on the Sinbad films and, you know, stuff like that. And that obviously inspired Neville to become an animator. And yeah, so when I got back in touch with him through social media, I was reluctant. Oh, do I really want to meet up with my ex-boss? You know, we didn't always see eye to eye. Obviously, he was a religious person and I'm not. We didn't really clash over it, but there was a weird kind of he'd say things to me. I know you don't believe any of this, but, you know, and I'd be like, okay, whatever. But there was a number of us who stayed in touch with him on and off throughout the years. And by then, he taught himself how to, you know, do sound mixing, proper editing, CGI, and he made a lot of strides into learning about AI. Whether you like AI or not, I'm not getting into it, but basically he was churning out so much footage. You know, he had a number of Facebook pages and Instagram accounts, and his big dream was to make a new film. His previous film got sold to a company in London who tried to pitch it to Korea. There was a stop motion version and a CGI version, and that never got a release, sadly. But now he wanted to revamp everything he'd done using a blend of CGI, stop motion, animation, and AI, whether you like it or not, because he felt as a one-man band without an income or a financial supporter, like he used to have, a partner, it's what he wanted to do to try and make his dream come true. Like me, he had a house full of creative projects, half finished, tons of film equipment, model kits, puppets, creatures, sculptures, you name it, all sorts of artifacts. And it just feels weird that there's a house there that has to be cleared, and all this stuff is probably just going to get binned, I suppose. Obviously, I'm not going to turn up at the door and say, can I have it? Firstly, because it's not mine, it's not my decision to make, and secondly, you know, there aren't things there that are mine, and you know, I don't even have the room here with all my stuff. I'm a similar creative person who's got lots of stuff everywhere. I can't house over 500 spaceships and 200 puppets, because he's easily got that much stuff. It just feels very, very weird. Like I say, in later years, we met up on a regular basis. He'd ring me a lot. He was very insistent on ringing me and other people on the phone rather than texts and stuff, because he believed that people don't communicate enough. And he's kind of right to a certain extent. And though I didn't always relish the thought of, oh, yeah, Nev's on the phone again, you know, he did try a lot. And in the last 2 days, I went over to his house to see him, and he commissioned me to build a set for him. And I left his house he said, there's a bus back in 6 minutes. So I jumped on the bus, and he texted me when I got home and said, I'm sorry I rushed you out of the house so soon, but I'm not feeling too great. And that's the last I heard from him. But he didn't need another set, especially a practical set, when he'd bought lots of CGI packs of built sets that look like this, and all kinds of creatures and characters and vehicles. But he commissioned me to build a set because he was doing his best to give me some money, because he knows that I'm not doing too well cash-wise, and he was just trying to help in his own way. So, you know, I respect him for that. And I know over the years, lots of us would poke fun at him for just probably because he was, you know, the boss character, and everyone's got their own quirks and stuff. And I'm the same. I'm just people laughing at me as well. You know, what can you do? But there you go. He always used to say that life was too short, and you know, we don't know when our time is up and that, or when we're gonna go. And all I can hope is that when his time came, he didn't suffer too long. I know he was diabetic. You know, and he had a fall last year that worried him quite a bit. So, yeah, he was worried about being on his own, you know, and having another fall or you know, a faint or something like that, you know. My camera is doing some weird movement. I don't know why. Anyway, so yeah, he was a creative till the end. I'll give him that. And he did quite a lot. He did care about me a great deal, and I didn't like that. I'm feeling a bit choked up now. Apologies. You know, he would always insist on buying me some shopping, if we were walking around Tesco, but have you got fruit? Have you got apples? And and I'd be like, can you stop buying me stuff? I feel like a charity case. He goes, no, you're not a charity case, Terry. You're a very creative man, and blah, blah, blah. And he'd say all these nice things. And I would be annoyed by it because, firstly, I don't like myself that much anyway. I don't feel I'm worthy of that much praise. And secondly, I've always said to him that charity should be both ways. I should be doing stuff for you. He's like, yeah, but you've done me artwork and you've done me models and you've done voiceovers for me. But I'm like, yeah, but you've paid me for those. So when I get stuff given to me that I can't pay back, it makes me feel really awkward. Well, I'm not feeling awkward anymore. I'm just feeling a little bit sad. And I suppose there's more that could be said. But I've covered all the main things. And the people who I used to work with know of this now. And they're equally sort of sad and surprised. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It's very close to home, It's like I said, he wasn't the best friend, but I saw him regularly, and I'll miss him now. So there you go. Life's too short, and make the most of it while you can, I guess. Cheers, Nev.